Okay, the new album Guitarscape is released on the 27th of September, and I will, of course, put a purchasing link just below this video and urge you to check it out. If I may, the first question, the title intrigued me really. I saw Guitarscape as a kind of a pun on landscape and as a kind of a topography of different musical styles and colors you're exploring. Am I right, or am I just
No,
reaching?
no, no. I couldn't have put it better myself. In fact, I wish I had put it that way. No, that's very accurate, really. I like the sound of it because it was kind of lucid and kind of, invented,
Yeah.
Guitarscape, I don't know whether anybody's done that. So, yeah, it did seem to paint that kind of mood, where it was going to be not lavish, but a kind of a broad set of sounds and colors and textures that were a little bit different. Yeah.
Are you pulling sounds from kind of your own influences or just random sort of guitar styles you want to try on this album?
Well, I don't know. I just find my way. I don't always, I mean, it appears I have a plan, but
Uh-huh.
in a way, what I'm really doing is exercising instincts and sort of guesses, really, wild guesses. And that's how I got the backing tracks for the album, was really by improvising on a keyboard and then having lots of these tracks, that all had a different tempo, they had a different keyboard texture, and I was then beset with the task to kind of fathom out what were the best colors to add to that. Was it an electric moment or was it, and a lot of them were electric moments,
Yeah.
including steel guitar. But some of them were acoustic. On some of them
Mm.
are that Chet Atkins CE guitar that I play that sounds like a classical,
Yeah.
but I don't think you find many classical players playing that guitar. It's a very wonderful guitar that produces this impact, this attack, and also this kind of familiar sound, but with an added sort of, I think, an added sort of modernness to it. And I can play it like any other guitar. I tend to play it with a plectrum. So that's on tracks like Distillations and Passing Thoughts, and particularly Seesaw, which is a kind of a kind of quite unusual track too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mean, it must be, I get the impression it's probably a lot more pleasurable sort of creating music by yourself than working within the context of a band.
I like that. That poses sort of truth and untruth. Of course, working on my own, it gives me all that freedom, and I
Mm.
can write and kind of arrange and team up with Curtis Swartz and do some post production. But yeah, I mean, I don't underestimate the power and the joy, and the familiarity that I have with working with bands is just a life part of my life's work. I think what's different about the solo is, yeah, it is like a branch almost away from groups. So I do enjoy that, and it's unquestionable that I'm the only person who knows when it's right. I wrote it, I played it, I produced it. So in a way, what I'm doing is something highly personal, but at the same time, it's an open door.
Yeah. Fascinating keyboard sounds on this album. I just wonder what keyboard equipment was actually used. It's you playing it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's me playing. It's just one keyboard. It's called a Novatron Summit. So it's a keyboard that has been around a few years, and Curtis had one at his studio. And I kept finding, previously that it was a very useful tool to add that little extra color somewhere. And it's a synth, it's a real genuine synth. So when I got one myself, I was taken back,
Yeah.
by the sumptuous sounds that I could do. So most of the tracks are just one keyboard actually, but here and there I do the additional theme tune, or I add a little extra, thunder bass or something. I kind of use occasionally, but that's quite minimal really. So most of the album is a drummer. I'm doing the bass, I'm doing the guitars, and I'm also doing the keyboards. But it's not like I set out to do, like to find out what I could overdub on top of this.
Mhm.
It's really actually quite a neat, and maybe that's what's created a sense of space in this album that's quite different from, I'd say, all of my work. Particularly Yes, it's quite different, although it has all the shades, I hope, of my Yes stylings. But at the same time, there's a lot of space that
Yeah.
I can choose myself.
Yeah. I mean, I particularly enjoyed the track Upstream.
Oh,
I just thought it was really beautiful. When you write these individual pieces, do you have a specific image in your mind that focuses the tone of the piece, or? Or
Well,
do you name it after the piece, really? Do you have the piece
I
first?
do usually find a name. Now, two things that either it comes immediately, I put this together and I go, oh yeah, upstream, no way. Or I labor for a long time thinking, what is that? Is that going to be right? So some of them have like recording titles. In other words, like a lot of them had Summit numbers, so it was Summit 6 or Summit 10, which was no use to me. As soon as I played guitar on it, I had to try and call it something. So that's mostly when these titles come out the woodwork. But sometimes they don't, and I play around with them. But I remember that one of the last tracks I recorded was, and Dylan played on, was Secret Mission, which we haven't come around to Dylan yet. Sorry, the Secret Mission. And on that track, that's one of the newest tracks I did. And the title was more or less instant. As soon as
Right.
I started playing the thematic sort of approach to it, there's a couple of thematic that were invented from the keyboard tune, but sometimes the title really just, it's nice to grab it and say, oh, that's okay, and settle on it.
How much creative input did Dylan actually have into this music at all? Any the writing or anything? Or
No, he doesn't collaborate with me at the writing stage, but
Mhm.
certainly this is the ninth solo album Dylan's played on for me. That's
Yeah.
besides the trio and various other outings we've done.
Uh,
But basically, he is a vital part of my world. When I'm doing the tracks, I'm really thinking about Dylan and how he's going to play this, whether it's a double time feel or single time feel. But what I tend to do is give him a very straightforward guide. It's just the guide I've been working with, just kind of ticks over and nothing much happens on it. So that in fact he can steer that, to incorporate his style of drumming, which is kind of like an instinctive family approach to playing with me, I guess. But he only started doing that in 1993 after he'd had like 10 years of his own experience, finding out what it was like playing in a band and what it was like trying to lead a band.
yeah.
And then he came round to where he is now, which is, he's a very fine musician and
Yeah.
can turn his hand in any direction, as is noticeable if you look at the different albums he's been on. I don't only call him when it's prog or something. You know what I mean? We've always got the connection, which I greatly appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a question. I'd like to go back a few years, actually. I saw an interesting poster. It was posted by Dennis Dunaway, and it was a poster from Ottawa, I think about 70, 71. And it had on the bill Black Sabbath, the Alice Cooper group, and Yes. And I just thought, well, that seems like an odd melding. What was it like playing, supporting bands like that? And what was it like playing to their audience? No chickens thrown about, were there, or anything?
But yeah, well, I mean that's a pretty deep question because not deep in the sense that it's deep in memory.
Yeah.
I do still recall that because I don't think we'd played This is in San Francisco, right?
I think it
Or
was Ottawa. I said Ottawa on the
Ottawa. Oh,
poster.
yeah, that's right. I seem to remember a similar lineup happened. Well, maybe it was just Black Sabbath in San Francisco. So that one in Ottawa, wow, with Alice Cooper. I sort of remember Alice more than I remember um, Ozzy and Black Sabbath. It's so vague. I could almost hardly put any words together. And I was there. I remember a sort of atmosphere vibe about it. And certainly playing to other people's audiences at that point, when we were really quite a new band, was
Mhm.
more of a struggle. Then obviously it became very easy for us because we became accepted kind of rapidly in America.
Yeah.
So in fact, those kind of shows when we opened for Mountain, and of course, we started with Jethro Tull, so we were very used to that spot to get ourselves established. But of course, we were opening for pretty big acts, so
Yeah.
we had a pretty big audience. So that kind of fluidly happened quite rapidly.
Yeah, I can imagine. I just can't. I just can't in my own head put Yes with the Alice Cooper group. Really, it just.
You could ask what was Bill Graham thinking, or what was certainly in San Francisco, but what was the producer thinking? Well, I guess what he didn't realize, and maybe wasn't so much of a concern then, is if you were a new act, you just were tried out. You
Yeah.
were put in front of the audience, see what they do, see if
Yeah.
they like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sticking with Black Sabbath. I'm curious to ask you: is it true that Black Sabbath actually broke the Yes cow? Is there any truth to that story?
Broke the scale. Now that would have had to have happened. Do you mean that would have had to happen in the studio when we
Yeah,
had the
topic while you were recording, because
photographic?
Sabbath were recording in the adjacent studio, were they
They
not?
were, they were, it was a different location. I mean, it was across the road, it was
Okay.
only across the road. So the studio we were in was a new one that had 24 track and it was separate. But the other place was the Madhouse where I played on the, Al Reed, sorry, Al Reed, Lou Reed record.
Right, yeah.
They were over there. I don't remember them breaking, but we most probably would have laughed or said, "Oh, we'll send you the bill." But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of craziness in those days. It was more gentle sort of craziness. So breaking our cow may have been something, but I can't verify under oath that any more truth about that.
Well, it's just one of those stories that knocks about. I don't know if there's any
Yes.
truth to it or not, but
Oh, okay.
um, one interesting story in your autobiographies, you talked about July 1969 playing the Royal Albert Hall Pop Proms. Bodas
Yes.
played there,
Yes.
and you seem to imply that Chuck Berry had a problem with you particularly, or
Yeah, well, it wasn't all that discreet. It was just that it was planned that Bodas would back Chuck Berry, and we thought, well, that's kind of easy. They're all 12 bars, and everybody knows Johnny B. Good.
yeah.
But actually, what happened was he walked on stage and he pointed at me and he said, "We don't need you, right?" That's just like that. So I went, "Oh, okay, Chuck." In a way, I was kind of relieved because all I was going to do there was going to do, 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 do. I was only going to be a support, but I was looking forward to it. But I tell you what, I made up for it because I'd knocked on his dressing room door with my famous 175 in my hand. And I kind of, no, yeah. I said, "Oh, hi, Chuck, can I have a word? I just want to show you my guitar." So he says, "Sure, come in." And he looked at the guitar and I saw his mouth go, "Oh my God." So then I said, "Do you want to play it?" And he started playing it. And he's one of only two people who've actually I've invited to play this guitar in its life. So it's been very special to me, but it's actually quite special to me because Chuck Berry played it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's fantastic for me. And he said, "Yeah, it's a really good guitar." Of course, it was and is still an unbelievably fine guitar. I mean, they get them right sometimes, and this was right like the ones he liked. So he knew Gibsons, and he knew this was a nice guitar. So that's my nice sort of story about Chuck. Although he didn't want me to play,
Yeah.
he did tune into me when I showed him a guitar. It's nice.
Were you never a huge fan of like Fender Strats or that particular sound?
No, but I like the sound. But when I had the experience of playing them, it was just different for me. So different that at the time I thought I'd never play a Strat or a Telly.
Right.
I'd always play a Gibson, and I'd be very. But that changed radically by the mid 70s when I had a Strat and I had a Telly, and I thought, boy, these things are great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, were you unhappy generally with Roy Thomas Baker's production on Heaven and Earth?
Well, let's say it was dangerous trying things again that didn't work because Paris didn't work, with Yes in 1978,
Mhm.
79. And the chemistry wasn't right then at all. I mean, it was just pointless. There was no way we were going to really make an album then. Or something was going to come out of it, and some tracks came out that were released by Rhino somewhere, and they're not very wonderful. So anyway, we tried it again because our manager at the time, had a bit of an in with Roy and thought, in his mind, and we always went, well, I don't know. So we met up, we had a meeting, and I thought after it, no, no, it's not going to work. And Chris said, "Oh, let's give it a try." I said, "Look, it's not really give it a try. You either yes or no. You know, if you go, yeah, I mean, you're going to set it all up and he's going to be producing." So he said, "Well, I think it's worth a try." So I said, "Well," so anyway, there was a mixed feelings about whether this felt right, in the
Mhm.
first place and the kind of person. So we actually had given him a track to listen to, and what we did was we sent him it again as an update. Here's the update, and he didn't comment. You see, so I happened to say to him at that meeting, I said, we've been sharing a few bits, and what do you think about that idea? He said, "Oh yeah," and I went, "Well, yeah, okay." When a room goes quiet, it's like nothing more to add then. No, 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 no. So it was all very blasé. It was all very kind of. So when we started working together, I mean, I can't tell you, but it didn't work, and we struggled and we found some songs and it kind of went round the houses. And then somehow painfully we got through it all. And then he did some mixing, and we said, no, we don't like those mixes. So we started mixing it ourselves with Billy Sherwood. And we were then on tour. It was like, is this a nightmare or what? Is this a nightmare? So it was a very difficult crossroads in Yes's time, to meet up with Roy, and it not. I mean, he if he'd been right for us, it would have been great. We would have accelerated all the plans. But no, it didn't work. So that's what it was.
Right. I mean, interesting. I mean, I've got to ask you, the Yes album, Open Your Eyes, is that a Yes album or a conspiracy album in your
Well,
opinion?
well, you're absolutely right. It is really a conspiracy album that got presented to John and I, with Chris saying, look, Billy could join the band. And we got these recordings, and John and I were like, well, yeah, but what about us recording? So, yeah, that was another most peculiar album. And with great respect that I have for Chris and Billy, um, I don't want to say too much, but it was a bit of a fob. It was a bit of a blind alley, if you like, because really John and I added, from the balcony, because we wanted to add something to this album that was just a couple of guys doing the song, because the rest of it was very, had a lot of the big Billy production on it already, and we had to fathom out. Open Your Eyes, the song was about the only song we really pulled everything back and said, well, like, what would you do if you just had this song and you wanted to play the guitar on it? That's the only track that really got that deserved space, where I could work from a lower point rather than something that's, because Billy's very good at filling in all the space. He'll do the keyboards, do the guitar, he's like, well, okay. But that's not really a way that Yes generally make music. So we work with it. Open Your Eyes was the most collaborative track. But yeah, it's a gone and forgotten album, even though I don't really like saying that, but a bit like, now Heaven and Earth. And it was an experiment, didn't quite pay.
Yeah. I mean, you say in your autobiography that it's an album that you struggled to contribute to.
Yes.
Did you just feel nothing artistically for the material, or?
There was too much shape already. In
Uh-huh.
other words, it was kind of off and running. It was a bit like John and I were going, well, look, hang on a second. Could we just can I get in here? So that was the struggle, was really that I don't think at that time Billy or anybody was very good at pruning back and making space for another idea. A lot of the ideas were already set in stone, and
Um, who can we blame for the Magnification album cover? Who's
yeah.
responsible?
Well, I mean, if anybody was to be blamed, it had to be my dear friend John, because he didn't want Roger to do that. And like the other times that happened, it usually appeared to be a huge mistake,
Yeah.
but not one that John in particular learnt from, that, without Roger Dean, the sleeves can tend to look surprisingly awkward and irrelevant, And I think that's the same with, bless all the guys who did them. I mean,
Mm.
knocking that, we called them, we asked them to do it. It's not their fault,
Yeah.
but we're going for the one and tomato, and then Magnification. Yeah, very disappointing how it can veer off the tracks. Not that it would have been any use. It would have been almost worse if they tried to copy Roger,
Yeah.
because we didn't use that approach. Like, oh, we get somebody who looks like Roger. That's really tacky.
Yeah.
But also some of those were, Magnification. So again, we asked for it, we got it.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested in Magnification now. I'd be interested to know if there's a mix available without the orchestra. I'd like to hear just the band playing. I don't know if that would ever see the light of day.
Well, there is a mix like that. I do have a mix like that. It's surprising how quite satisfying it was, band playing, like I was saying about Guitarscape, sometimes emptiness is kind of a nice factor. You can
Yeah.
hear the space, you can hear the guys, and that it does sound a bit like that. And Tim Widener was the engineer on that. He recorded Turbulence with me, and he's Trevor Horn's, #1 engineer now, and was then. So we had a great guy on board, and it took a wrestle. And always had this little comment, is that it was an absolute wrestle that you heard, that I went through, to make sure that people like you who are aware enough know what they might or hear what they might have expected, which was a band with an orchestra. Because when it was deemed to be finished, way before it was finished, but when it was deemed to be finished, oh, this is fine. I was like, yeah, but for a start, where's the guitar?
Yeah.
So the guitar had been swamped by the orchestra, and there were people in the band who didn't seem to mind that, but my ears told me that's wrong, And so Tim Widener and Jordan Bellion went through everything I went through to make sure that I thought the balance had been improved, from this, squashed orchestra, squashed band from the orchestra, and then, I think I brought some clarity to it. So I can listen to it because I did have a hand in mixing it, but I was the guy who fixed it.
Right. So maybe a special edition with recommissioned artwork.
Yes, yes. I don't know whether I should tell you this. Well, Roger Dean's got one sleeve that he did for an album that he didn't get asked to do. So there you are. But I won't tell you which. But basically, Magnification isn't the one. But yeah. It could be interesting if we're working. Yes, we're working with Mercury, and I believe they've got Magnification. That's a very interesting point. I might make a note of it.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to twist your arm a little bit more. You can say no comment if you like, and that is a new Yes album. Is there a new Yes album in the can? Is there anything you can give away regarding what's happening there?
The official statement after that question is we are writing. We are writing. We are, so we're in the progress, if you like. We're progressing through the planning of getting more music ready. Yeah, but that's about all I can say.
Yeah, maybe an individual track, 4 sides of vinyl, something like Topographic Oceans, be fantastic. Best Yes album, in my opinion.
Say that again. Topographic Oceans on vinyl.
No, yeah, I would just say an album that's like 4 sides of vinyl, a single track on each side. Yes. Topographic Oceans is the best Yes album, in my opinion.
Well, I'm very pleased you like it that much, and I love it really. I mean, it's a very deep and soulful record. So yeah, I love it lots too. But those undertakings are quite big, But like virtually what we've been doing with wonderful Sony Inside Out and Thomas Weber is really an album with a sort of bonus album as well. So we haven't been shy to present fair amounts of music. In other words, not limited amounts, but kind of, quite fair amounts.
Yeah, I have a completely hypothetical question for you next. You once said in an interview with this channel is that you considered auditioning for the Rolling Stones when Brian Jones passed. Would you have been happy playing within the confines of sort of rock blues? And could you see yourself as a Stones guitar player?
Right. I love that you picked up on that because yeah, it's true. Yeah, I was asking people, how do you do this? I mean, there's an opening, and the reason is that at that time I might have been very happy with the Rolling Stones and really excelled with the Rolling Stones, adding a little complexity, but not losing sight of the sort of basics that they were there. Because I've been talking a lot recently about how it's fundamentally so important for Yes to never forget it's a rock band. Because when it does, it goes up its own backside too easily. Yeah. So if you think about Yes as a fundamental, like the Yes album, and then Roundabout's a great example. How so with the chorus, we are capable of playing rock music. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But back then, when I was so much younger, I hadn't, I was into my, Wes Montgomery, and I was into my classicals and all these different things very early on. But rock was central to me then. And a blues gig, where, like I did with Chris Fowler and the Thunderbirds. I mean, I played one night in Wolverhampton with. So it was one of my most loved nights of performance in my whole life was to play with Chris, with the Thunderbirds. It meant so much to me to stand in for Albert Lee. And basically, I've always got to make sure I don't forget that this is rock and roll, I mean, I can do other stuff anywhere I like, like my solo guitar works is really central to my musical direction. But as a guitarist in a band, it's got to rock or it sucks.
Yeah. Talking about rock music, Frank Zappa said, jazz isn't dead; it just smells funny. I mean, with rock and roll now, you've got lots of bands artists playing to backing tracks live and all sorts of things. So I'd have to
Yeah.
say, how healthy is rock and roll?
Well, yeah, you hit a good point because there's so much assistance being done. I mean, I heard a band on Glastonbury and I thought, this is so good, I can't believe it. And I was watching and going, I can't believe this is so good. Two guitars, those parts are perfect. Hang on. You know what I mean? I detected the sort of studio quality of what I was hearing at Glastonbury. So of course this could detract. Not that it will, or not that it always everywhere will it detract from the fact of what I'm saying in the previous question about rock and roll being so central and vital to the music we all like, you know. But it could get awfully flaky if you know if miming is sort of seen. But you know, when you look at what ABBA have got with that Voyager thing, you know, I mean, you know, we are going into other domains all the
Yeah,
time. We're kind of starting to see other things that you could do. But you know, all I'd like to say is that when I go to see music, yeah, I like to see a band play together, and that is the spark of the
yeah,
music, the
yeah,
word together, you know. And
yeah.
if it's not very together, it ain't very good because that's what they're supposed to be doing is playing it together. So yeah, it's not that I worry. I mean, it's just that I know we've got to accept change, and music will change.
Well, a lot of pop artists who the emphasis is on dance and choreography, they say they can't dance and sing. But I always say, well, James Brown managed it, didn't he? No.
Yeah, what have I thought? Yeah.
Speaking of, go back to talking about the blues. I've got to end on this point really, and that is we just lost John Mayall. How important, influential John Mayall's blues breakers to you as a young guitarist?
Well, actually, you know, as soon as you said his name, and I'm very sad to hear he's passed away, but it took me to the Manchester, not Liverpool, but it took me back to the Manchester Cavern in a split second, because he and the in crowd becoming tomorrow, you know, transitioning somewhere in that time when we were starting to play psychedelic music. We were playing kind of crazy dance music for a little while just before that. We were like, you know, we just loved it. Yeah. So it was all very, it was based on Tamla Motown, and it was, but basically the other guy the guy we were opening for was John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers.
Right.
I think this was way before. I can't remember what year Eric was in it, but Eric wasn't there. No, it was
Eric
not
was 66, wasn't it, or something?
right. Yeah, I'm wondering. So there was, you know, we were on the same circle, Long John Baldry, you know, John Mayall. We couldn't help running into that blues circuit.
Mhm.
And funny enough, I'd started in that with the Syndicats because we were kind of like a kind of a blues band. But
Yeah.
of course, In Crowd was like the poppier kind of Otis Redding songs and all this kind of thing. It was kind of what was current then, you know. But by the time we were going up to Manchester Cavern, uh, it may have been that we were. Well, it was an all-nighter. You see, so
Right.
you kind of forget some things that happen at all-nighters, staying awake, and yeah. But I think that his role, obviously, with Eric and so many other guitarists, has been. I think it's very often there's another guy who spots guitarists, you know, and he gets them in the
Yeah.
band, like Chris Farlow got Albert Lee. And basically, you know, and that's so known to Elvis got Scotty Moore, you know. So basically there is this wonderful team up of so to be John Mayall's guitarist was obviously, you know, had lots of accolade about it, and he was a wonderful guy, wonderful interpreter of the way blues could sound with an English British slant about it, you know,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
actually was very popular in America, you know. So I can't judge what kind of career he had there, but I hope he was very well received.
Yeah. I tell you a guitarist who I love really, but and that's Richard Thompson. I don't know. Are you a fan of Richard Thompson's work at all?
Yeah, I like his work. He's got a nice subtlety and he's a wonderful player.
Yeah.
And, you know, he cares about the sound, the tone, and also the kind of heritage of what he is. You know, it's very important not to try and be something you're not. And I think that's what he is. He's kind of true to his folk sides. He's true to his leanings, you know, of the kind of guitar styles he likes. Very, very talented.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I just mentioned this album again. The album is Guitarscape. It's released on the 27th of September. There is a purchasing link just below this video. Steve, thank you so much for your time. And I wish you the best of luck with this album. Hope you sell loads and loads of them.
Well, thanks very much.
All the best anyway. Thank you so much.
All right, then. We'll take it well. Stay well and take care. Thanks,
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.